The anime begins with our hero named Noor. He is removing trash from some canals of the Kingdom of Klai. He is very tired, but he is also proud of his work. And when dawn arrives, an agent and the Lord thank him for his enormous effort. Approving his completed task, Noor quickly takes the cart to remove the garbage. And after that, he starts working on a construction project for the people. This guy seems to like heavy labor quite a lot. And later, when he finishes, a lord approves his task as completed. He cheerfully comments that thanks to him, they will be able to finish the work ahead of schedule. Noah is already preparing to leave, but at that moment, he hears the voice of a woman asking for help. He runs to reach her quickly, but when he arrives at the place, he is surprised to see a huge manure that even the knights were unable to defeat. Suddenly we go back in time about 15 years earlier in the Kingdom of Klai, where we see the young Noor lighting the fireplace to prepare his mother's tea. She is very sick, and after he finishes making the tea, he brings it to her in bed. He asks her to be careful, since it might be a little hot. Although his mother thinks it is perfect, Noor sees that everything is fine with his mother and says that he needs to go to the hills to feed the goats and also hunt rabbits for dinner. But he notices a small concern from his mother, which is why she asks him to promise that he will not leave the village nor go beyond the stones. But at that moment, his mother begins to cough, and Noor goes to get more tea for her. But she stops him, calls him, and begins to clean his face. She apologizes for not being able to do anything for him, and asks that at least he lied the way he wishes. At night, Noor prepares a tasty soup for his beloved mother. When he goes to bring it to her bed, unfortunately, he finds her lifeless body. Amid his screams, morning arrives, and soon after, Noor sadly buries his mother beside his father's body. Although the loss of his loved one saddens him, he fills himself with courage and continues carrying out his daily activities as usual. He cleans, hunts, chops wood, plants trees, and everything else. The guy is tough, but it is not easy to sit down to eat completely alone. But with time, you get used to it. And at night, he is organizing some of his father's belongings, when suddenly he finds a book that had fallen. He remembers the story his father used to tell him before sleeping, which speaks about someone who defeated a dragon, together with his companions. He learned spells from ancient mages and obtained the elixir of the King of the Dead. Noor always felt happy when hearing him talk about adventure. He ends up remembering that his mother asked him to live as he wished, and he keeps reflecting on her words, and the next morning he prepares plenty of straw for all the animals, since he decided to leave the village to become an adventurer. Soon after, he says goodbye to his parents, although he hesitates for a moment. But even so, he continues his journey beyond the rocks. One certain night, he becomes frightened when he is sleeping alone in the forest and hears noises. And the very next day, he finally finds the beautiful kingdom of Claws. He quickly speaks with the city guards, and upon entering, he is surprised to see so many people gathered. Adventurers, merchants, all together, making everything flow. Later, he finds the Capital Guild and decides to enter. Although the leader orders him to leave since it is not an appropriate place for children, he warns him that he could worry his parents. But Noor informs him that both have passed away, and the elder is moved, and therefore helps him. He tells him to register at the guild first, and that he must attend classes at the royal school. There it is, basically free training for whatever class he desires. And if he wants to be an adventurer, first he needs to acquire skills, whether swordsmanship or magic. Noor becomes excited with his help, and immediately heads to the swordsman school, because in his father's story, they could bring down a dragon with their strike. After that, he begins his training and a few months pass, and he realizes that almost everyone obtained magic or abilities in their swords. Unlike him who can only strike a log, his master asks him to stop the training, because unfortunately he has learned almost nothing in 3 months. The only thing he can do is a parry. And if you have played Sekiro or any Souls game, you know that a parry is extremely good, but you have to be very skilled to perform a parry. Basically, the elder advises him to choose another path where he can better develop his talent. Noor becomes a little encouraged by his words, but wastes no time and goes to the warriors' school. They can fight with all kinds of weapons, besides being the shields of their allies, being the closest thing he found to an adventurer. But after attending the school for a few months, he is also expelled from there, since he cannot do anything either. He did not progress much physically, and if he continues like this, he could even die. Then he goes to the hunter's school, but he also fails there, and he goes from school to school, thief, mage, cleric, but none of them lead to anything. He only learned the very basics of the basics in the most incompetent way possible. At the mage school, he learned a small fireball. At the cleric school, he learned the most basic healing spell possible, and so it went on. After that, he heads to the guild, where the leader is shocked to learn that he could not learn anything. 3 months had already passed, and then the official apologizes to him since he will not be able to register him if he does not possess a skill with which he can defend or attack. Noor leaves depressed for not being able to complete his goals, and upon returning to the farm, he greets the graves of his parents. He apologizes for having failed and for not possessing any talent. But even so, he nurtures hope and thinks about striving to train far more than anyone else. He crafts his own wooden sword and creates a kind of training field, practicing the parry skills that his master taught him. He repeats this every day until he discovers a new ability later. Noor worked hard in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. And after 1 year, he was already able to parry 10 swords at once with a single strike. But he did not learn any new ability and thinks that this is nothing special. Yet he knows that he is improving little by little. Time continues, and now 3 years have already passed. And we see Noor, who is far tougher, managing to deflect even 100 swords at once with a parry. But unfortunately, even so, he still did not acquire any new ability. And if he continues this way, he will not be able to become an adventurer. Then he continues his training, and his wooden sword begins to seem very useless since it keeps breaking. But even so, he continues. And after training for 10 years, this individual demonstrates unshakable determination. With a single strike, he is capable of deflecting the attack of more than 1,000 wooden swords. The guy is extremely tough, but even so, he did not obtain any new ability. And the next day, he is at his parents' grave, saying that he will make one last attempt to test his luck in the city. And with this parry skill he already had, he could clear Sekiro easily. Soon after, he goes to the guild and hands his resume to the receptionist. She becomes saddened when she sees that all his skills are insignificant. She comments about the basics training school, but he informs her that he already went there and did not learn anything. So the receptionist has no option other than refusing to register him. She apologizes to him, but Noor says that she does not need to apologize. And when he is about to leave, the guild leader appears and warns him not to bother his new employee. Noor immediately recognizes him and greets him cheerfully, but the old man does not even know who he is. Yet after observing him more carefully, he realizes that it is No, and they begin to have some drinks together. He informs that during all this time, he only managed to slightly improve his parry ability and did not acquire any new skill. And if parrying more than 1,000 swords is only slight improvement, then I do not know what truly means improving a lot. The old man then explains that there are different types of adventurers. Rank S is the highest and rank E is the lowest. But to be recognized as rank E, he must at least possess a useful ability. But little Noor, who is not little anymore at all, the guy looks like he has been using steroids. He is absurdly gigantic, says that he has none and he was already about to give up. But the elder comments that there exists a level below E, which is F. This classification is unknown even among aspiring adventurers. But there are certain conditions, such as, for example, not being allowed to carry out missions that could lead to his death, or searching for objects outside the city. The only thing he will be able to perform is work within the city, assisting the inhabitant. When the leader thought that he would not accept, Noor was completely excited. He says that he is willing to do it. So, without further delay, he hands him his adventurer identification. Rank F. Noor was so excited about his new job that he quickly begins working on the city's missions, helping young women with their cats and the residents. And naturally, without neglecting his training. After finishing everything, he feels satisfied for being an adventurer, even if only rank F, since he considers that aiming for more than that would be asking too much from himself. And now we return to the beginning of the anime, where he hears the girl scream. As he heads to the place, he sees the minnow, but he thinks it is a giant bull. It begins to cause destruction and to eliminate one by one all the soldiers who defend the girl. Noor was frozen watching everything, thinking about what he could do. But upon seeing the minnow, which had eliminated all the soldiers, he grabs a sword, and with the other hand he throws a stone at the monster. But this stone causes no damage. It only manages to draw its attention and start the fight. The only thing he can do is parry its attacks, since he has no ability to injure it. And while he looks for an opportunity to counterattack, he realizes that his sword is already in pieces. It cannot withstand the power of our big boy. The Minotaur seems to be controlled by someone, and because of that, it heads toward the girl to hurt her. But Noor uses his quickness to move much faster, managing to stop the monster's attack. But he ends up breaking his sword, and at that moment, he thinks that although he cannot become a hero, at least he must be able to protect a frightened girl. He remembers the words of his father, in which the adventurers rose with their swords and defeated evil. The Miner then charges at him with its axe, but Noor uses his parry with the sword handle itself, causing the creature's own axe to cut off its head. and right after, exhausted from the fight, he questions how difficult it is to be an adventurer. And after that, the girl thanks him and asks his name, but he turns his back, commenting that he is an unimportant nobody, and then leaves without saying anything more. And when he finds himself alone, he notices how his hands tremble, thinking that a simple loose bull in the city was such a great threat and the adventurers could not stop it. But he knows very well that he still has much to learn. Little does he know that he has just faced an absurdly powerful manure. Well, soon after we see the soldiers cleaning the mess that was caused by the manure. And then we see Lady Limeberg, but I will just call her Lion. She is praying for the souls of the fallen soldiers. And at that moment, Ines runs desperately toward her. She asks if she is injured, and upon hearing that she was fine, she immediately kneels to apologize to her because she should have accompanied her. But Lady Lion says that it is not her fault and regrets having worried her. At that moment, one of Lion's retainers informs that they must return to the castle because her brother Lord Rain wishes to hear all the details of what occurred. On the other hand, Lion explains everything to Rain, reaching the conclusion that the only coherent explanation for all of this is that it was an assassination attempt, since the monster was a Minoor belonging to the deepest depths of the Abyss dungeon. That creature cannot simply get lost and arrive in the middle of the city attacking everyone. Most likely, someone did this. Deshawn agrees and shows him a ring that they found on the corpse of a merchant at the scene. This ring appears to have been the catalyst for everything, and that ring had already been inspected by the mage Oaken, the sovereign of spells. A manstone of very high purity was found, which would not be possible to find in any ordinary market. In addition, with the monotraces it possessed, they discovered that most likely the ring belongs to the magical empire of Doritas. Rain observes the ring, while commenting that purchasing a threat ranked like a Minotaur is not very cheap, and there are not many people capable of buying something like that. So he already more or less knows who may have done this, since lately there have been some people bothering him, and those people even placed a powerful restriction on the princess, and they make no effort to conceal their evidence. So it is most likely that they are waiting for a declaration of war, so that they can acquire the Dungeon of the Lost and all the disorderly ones, as well as the gold that it contains. And after that, he comments about a man who defeated a Minotaur in a matter of seconds. He only used a broadsword, stating that he is someone so experienced that he managed to evade the company of the shadows to the point of disappearing without leaving any trace. On the other hand, we see No, who appears at the guild, and the leader is surprised to see him well, since on the previous day there was an incident with a demon, but Noor cannot understand and replies that he was very tired after escaping from a very suspicious group that was following him, so he has no idea. The elder then becomes calmer and says that he is lucky not to have encountered those monsters, since even a former ranked adventurer like him would not last even a second in a battle like that. After that, he hands over the payment for the completed missions and asks whether he does not have plans to obtain a proper job, since if it were not for them, he would be earning 30% more at that moment. But Noor replies that being an adventurer is enough for him. But soon after, Lady Lion appears. She is hooded and tells him that she finally managed to find him. She used her long distance detection ability to locate him. The guild leader is surprised by her arrival, and Noor does not know who the hell she is. He asks whether she can use this ability thanks to the Thieves' School, although Lynn simply comments that she specializes in the field of magic, but she possesses an absurd number of abilities from all areas, though only at the most basic level, and she feels a little embarrassed to mention this to someone as strong as him. But Noor replies that she is mistaken, since being specialized in all areas is something quite impressive. Line realizes that they are attracting attention and asks whether they could talk outside, and the old man cannot contain his curiosity and asks what she is doing there and why she is looking for No. But she says that he did nothing wrong and only wants to talk with him. And then there is a scene change line, and Noor walks secretly through the streets thanks to the girl's ability. Noor hears some soldiers talking about the mysterious knight who defeated a monster, and later when they reach a quiet place, Lion apologizes for having interrupted his conversation with the guild leader. But she says that she needed to see him in order to properly show her gratitude and bows before him, thanking him for saving her life and that of many citizens of the kingdom. Noor feels embarrassed and comments that she is exaggerating since she possesses many special abilities, and thinks that in fact it was he who unnecessarily interfered in her path. But she informs him that he is terribly mistaken, and that if he had not acted, she would probably have died, and Noor then accepts her gratitude But Lin does not let him escape so easily, since she would like to repay the favor using all the resources of her life and those of her family as well if possible. But Noor refuses and replies that her thanks were more than sufficient and he does not need anything more. Lion continues insisting. Moreover, her father also wishes to thank him personally, commenting that although it does not appear so, she is a person of very high status, and she cannot remain with folded arms and leave her savior without a proper reward. But Noor replies that he simply does not need it. He is very humble, and after so much insistence from Lion, who is almost crying because she wants to repay a favor, Noor remembers that he was also persistent in that way at the cleric's school. So he accepts her offer and goes to meet her father, but not to accept excessively extravagant rewards. That is enough for Lion, and then they return to using concealment so they can reach the castle peacefully. When they finally arrive, Noor is surprised to see the size of that residence. On the way, Lion asks what his name is, and he answers no. And when he asks hers, she realizes that she never said it. And then she introduces herself to him as Linneberg plays, but she warns him that he can simply call her Line. And after that, they continue walking, and Noor thinks that to have such an enormous castle, she is probably very wealthy from the highest nobility, and he remembers the warning from the guildmaster. He said not to do anything that might offend her. And at that moment, Anise appears and welcomes the princess. She greets her and asks where her father is. Anise replies that he is in the audience chamber speaking with her brother and asks who the young man behind her is. Lion informs her that he is her guest. He is the man who saved her life the other day, and Anise quickly bows before him and offers to guide them to her lord. Although No, upon seeing her, thinks that she is a very kind person. Soon after, they continue on their way, but unexpectedly they are stopped by Gilbath, who points at Noor asking who the hell he is. He is startled and mentions that he should let him pass since he is a guest, in addition to being the person who saved her lady. He smiles when he sees him and says that he does not look like any hero at all, and then warns him to treat him with respect and advises him to follow them since the larger the escort, the better it will be. Gilb keeps observing him, and after a few seconds agrees to go. On the other side, we see Lion's father, who is cursing Didas, since they have no shame in breaking the non-aggression treaty. The king remembers that they already made their demands very clear, and he remembers that they asked him to hand over the rights to the dungeon, and in exchange they would offer their military prowess to the empire. But the king rejects this offer, since he does not intend to hand his kingdom over to someone like him, and tells him to go to hell. Then Mr. Mustache guarantees that he will regret his words. And back in the present, while they discuss what to do, Lion enters together with the others, and everyone kneels except Noor. The king notices that she is wearing the hermit cloak and asks her why she was outside, and she replies that she needed to do so to search for her savior. The king, upon hearing this, asks whether it is that man, and Noor apologizes to him for his appearance, since Lion was in a great hurry, so there was no time for him to dress in a more appropriate manner, and the king does not care about his appearance. He approaches him to give thanks, while Noor comments beforehand that he is not any noble, and he does not know proper manners, and therefore he might be somewhat rude unintentionally. He apologizes in advance, and the king begins to laugh and comments that this will only make things easier, and observes Noor's behavior, and despite his lack of etiquette, the king shakes his hand and thanks him for having saved his daughter, since if it were not for him, he would never have seen his daughter again. Noor becomes happy and lets him know that his words of gratitude are more than sufficient for him. But the king does not intend to let his hero leave empty-handed, and offers lands and wealth as a reward, provided that he asks. Noor, however, says that he wants nothing, and he offers half of his dungeon, which houses objects that anyone could dream of. The king asks whether he is certain, although Noor replies that he does not desire those things either. He does not want anything grand, remembering that his words are more than enough. But the king questions how he can show no interest in treasures or riches. He quickly thinks about what he can offer him, and suddenly he turns and decides to offer him a strange sword which draws Noor's attention. The king worries about giving away such a powerful weapon, but the king replies that now that he has returned home and is no longer in battles, that sword is nothing more than a decoration that is gathering much dust while doing nothing. Moreover, no one will notice if they replace it with a replica. Everyone watches in silence while he places his hands on the sword. While he does not know how important it is, when he picks it up, he notices that it is extremely heavy, and while embarrassed, he asks whether that sword is not important, because if it is, he cannot accept it. The king comments that he does not need to worry since this is an old sword that he found during his travels as an adventurer, so he can consider it a second-hand item from him. Noor accepts it, and the king asks him to swing it. Then Noor uses his physical enhancement, and he can move it freely. And this is something very impressive because he did all this with only one hand. The king becomes emotional and asks him to train his daughter, since things have been very dangerous lately, and the king is very worried about her. But Noor apologizes and comments that he is not very good at training others. Moreover, he advises her to choose her own path, and the king agrees with him, and after talking for a moment, quickly departs. On the way, he observes the sword, thinking that its weight must be perfect for training. But he also thinks that he just took something important from them, and this makes him uncomfortable. More quickly, he thinks that it has the same width as that old woman's gutter, so he already thinks about using that sword as a shovel to remove all the dirt from the old woman's canal. He is not serious. While thinking that he cannot wait to use it, Anise approaches him, apologizing since he is Lion's savior, and she should not have treated him rudely. And she acted that way because her main mission is to protect the House of Clay from any harm. Therefore, he must understand that her duty is more of a priority than entertaining guests. And he is surprised since she is not a simple maid, and this was quite obvious. And then takes the opportunity to introduce herself to him as the sub-captain of the Corps, the warrior corps of Cly, and she has been Lion's divine shield since her childhood, which led her to the honor of protecting Lion. And upon seeing that he is her savior, she promises to become someone he can trust, and that he only needs to ask for her help. Noor thinks that the people of that place are quite strange and like to keep giving thanks. So he thinks that he should just accept everything, and that is all. Soon after that, Anise informs him that despite everything, his conduct in the audience chamber before the king is unacceptable, and if he does that again, there will be serious consequences. Noor becomes startled and thanks her for the warning, while she smiles asking for his name. He comments that his name is Noor, and Anise becomes a little agitated. She has a very strange attitude, but she ends up leaving. Then Noor thinks that he irritated her, and when he is about to leave, he is interrupted by Gilbert. He asks whether he plans to leave so soon and proposes that he try that sword together with him. Soon after, while Noor was following Gilbert's, he wonders who the hell that man is and what he wants. He is exhausted and just wants to go home. But then he arrives at a battle simulacrum, where Gilbert's tells him that although it does not seem so, he is quite recognized in the capital for his performance. Therefore, he wants to test his strength and see what he is capable of. Noor thinks that he has not had a companion since he arrived at the school, and he knows that it is a gift from heaven to be able to practice together with another adventurer. And a few minutes later, they are there in the arena ready to fight. People become surprised to see that Captain Gilbert's is in a battle simulacrum, murmuring among themselves about who will end this fight at a disadvantage. Noor then simply takes the wooden sword, thinking that he will take the opportunity to face someone stronger than him. While Gilbert's takes a staff to begin the battle, the guy loves a spear. He tries to deliver some blows, but Noor dodges everything, admiring his perfect technique. But he also noticed that Gilbert's is very slow. Yet he quickly thinks that perhaps he is playing with him, since he does not deserve that someone so strong fights seriously with him. But quickly Gilbert says that he had been cautious, since he was a simple human. But he will stop holding back a little, and then Gilbert's advances against him. But at the moment he dodges, he becomes completely unprotected. But Noor thinks that this is a trap that he is setting to catch him right after a counterattack. But Gilbert's really is not doing any of that. He is only exerting himself to the maximum to at least touch him. After he uses all his combat techniques, he cannot even touch him. And because of that, Noor asks him to return to increasing his energy. Gilbert's laughs thinking about using another technique. And at that moment, Noor moves away, thinking that perhaps he is fighting seriously now. And because of that, he has become much stronger after his solitary training. He becomes glad, thinking that perhaps he can win this battle and truly become an adventurer. But suddenly Gilbert's launches a bizarre attack at him. His attack is called Drag Vade, and he was about to connect it on Noir, but he quickly notices and dodges his attack as if it were nothing. And Noir, at the peak of his humility, says that he lost the fight and that everything is fine for them to end it right there. Everyone who is there begins to murmur and question what happened, saying that perhaps Gilbert's only held back somewhat. No one can believe that that village guy, whom nobody knows who he has managed to face him head-on, but they begin to make various excuses for this. Yet Gilbert's truly understands what happened. He remembers when he trained a lot when he was a child. From the moment he held a spear, he already knew that he was incredible with it. He defeated everyone. But this guy is different. He simply used physical enhancement to manage to dodge all his attacks. And when you look at the ground, you notice several craters around. Noor simply is far too incredible, there is no way around it. He still remembers when he was talking with his tutor, saying that he was in eternal boredom, since everything he faced was very easy. And at that moment, the sovereign of the sword advised him to fight against an ease. Gilbert's replies that she is very strong, but what she lacks is effectiveness in combat, and if he fought, he would fight her in a battle simulacrum, and he would definitely be the victor. His master replies for him not to worry, since soon someone will arrive who is stronger than them. And returning to the present, Gilberts observes the wooden sword that Noor wielded, thinking about how enthusiastic he had been to fight against a human who managed to defeat the Minotaur, that young man whom he thought nothing of, who was even impolite in an audience with the king, treating him as if he were an equal. But he did not feel as if he truly had the power to kill the Minotaur. Yet even so, he managed to be much faster than the speed of sound, and even faster than his most powerful technique, in which he had been very certain that if his spear struck him, he would die at that instant. But he ended up making him look like a child against a very powerful monster. For the first time in his life, he was completely defeated, and still not satisfied with all of it, he surrenders right in front of him and says that he won, and that afterward he intends to come back to face him again someday. And as he withdraws, Gilberts observes the battlefield one more time and sees the cracks in the ground caused by No. And on the other side, we see Noir, who is wandering through the city, depressed. He believes he was an idiot for thinking that he had become stronger. But after using his physical enhancement and lightweight body to avoid Gilbert's attack, he barely managed to do it. But according to him, it was Gilberts himself who gave him time to escape the attack. This guy is unbelievable. He cannot understand how strong and absurd he truly is. But one day he will, I hope. He also says that Gilberts taught him a lesson that pride only leads to death, so Noor is very grateful to him. But he continues to be very weak and needs to train more intensely. And because of that, he begins to clean the sewer filth with the sword that was given to him. And while observing, he realizes that the work is excellent, since this sword makes the service much easier. People are also happy, since he finished much faster than before. And he remembers the king's words, who said that this sword would not get scratched simply because he would be rough with it. So he became very happy because he can do many things with this sword without any problem. It remains completely intact. And then we see that he is sitting thinking that thanks to his new work in the gutters, he did not have to transport dirt for some time. But he also worries because he can only accept frank jobs. And if the work in the royal capital dries up, there will be many entire days when he will do nothing. But now he has his new sword, so he plans to use it to try to be useful to people or something like that. He imagines using it to row, but to do that, he would have to buy a boat. He also thinks about removing a pizza from an oven with it. Furthermore, he could use it as a plate in order to make grilled skewers. The problem is the power of the fire. He can only produce small flame magic. While he was thinking about what to do with his life, Line approaches, greeting him good morning. Right afterward, he remembers In's words, who said that it is not allowed for him to be so familiar with the royal family. So he greets her calling her Lady Burger, but she becomes very awkward and says that he can simply call her Line, asking if someone said something about that, but he only ignores it and asks what she came to do there. Line replies that she has a special request to make. She wishes for him to accept her as his page. Noor does not understand what the hell that is, and she explains that a page is someone who takes care of his daily needs while learning techniques and absorbing the knowledge of their master. This is basically an apprentice, a disciple, but he does not wish to be her master, since to him he has nothing to offer. She becomes startled, questioning whether he thinks that a young woman like her is not reliable, or whether by chance she did something that displeased him the previous day. She says that although it may not seem so, she has the highest grades in the 6 training schools, and while she stays at his side, she will be able to become someone useful. But he replies that there is absolutely nothing that he can teach her. He also believes that she cannot help him since he can do everything by himself. His mother taught him properly, so he is fine. But Lion proposes to pay him as her instructor. Yet he continues refusing, saying that no matter what she says, he will not be her master. He can do everything alone, and he is fine the way he is. Lion then, seeing that there is no other option, decides to use her magic to demonstrate what she is capable of, assuring him that she has achieved the highest levels of magical skills she can use. And after that, she cuts down a tree with a small dagger, using her mist blade from the thief class. And after that, she removes the weapon she carries on her back and imbues it with magic, throwing it very close to No. And what she just demonstrated is a sacred class of swordsman technique called Divine Cut. It is a very specialized technique, and Noor observes everything in confusion, questioning why she is doing all of that, thinking that she certainly mistook him for someone else. It must be that line tells him that his power was recognized by the 6 sovereigns of the kingdom, and asks him to allow her to accompany him since she is certain that she will be able to help him somehow. And Noor realizes that she is very stubborn and does not want to understand, and he decides to show reality to her. So he ends up showing the only magic he can perform. One of the only ones actually, which is the small flame. And in a scene change, we see Line depressed, thinking that No is the famous young man that the masters spoke about in her schools, the talentless young man. But she always believed that this was an absurd idea. How could someone attend all 6 schools and simply only manage to learn the basic spells and go no further than that? She did not want to accept that idea. And shortly afterwards, she remembers that Master Oaken taught her how to produce her small flame. She was also able to create it, but the difference between her small flame and his was enormous. Hers was truly very tiny. Her master, however, was somewhat larger. He could make it bigger because he had spent a long time practicing, but it was simply useless since it could not really be used for anything. It was basically like saying, I trained here for many years, and I can make the flame a little bigger. But compared to Noor, it was essentially like a marble against a giant basketball. Noor shows his small flame, which has nothing small about it, showing that he spent many years training and refining this ability. His 6-class skills are extraordinary. The reason why she reproaches herself for wanting to be so arrogant toward him a short time earlier, seeing the enormous difference in power that exists between the two of them. But even so, in the future, she will stand in a royal position to support her brother in wars. And as the motto of her royal family says, the blood of the royal family must belong to the strong. And beyond all of that, she wishes to possess a strength as natural as the one he has. So later, she approaches Noir and acknowledges her pride and immaturity. She asks once again for him to teach her and recognize her as his page. She will do everything possible for him to accept her, calling him Sensei No. While he is surprised, Lin thinks that the supreme strength sought across generations resides within Noor himself. And on the other side, we see Ren questioning why his father chose to give the sword to Noor among all people. Since his father obtained that black sword of unknown lineage when he was an active adventurer, he entered the deepest section of the Dungeon of the Lost, together with the 6 sovereigns, and it was one of the longest and most dangerous missions in history. But it was with it that he managed to obtain a first-class dungeon relic. The blade of the sword is made from an unknown material harder than meathil or a chalcum and monometal. No matter the technique or ability used with it, it does not suffer a single scratch. That is why it was nicknamed the Unbreakable Sword. But the real question is, how could a material so resistant like this be mistreated enough to become deformed in such a way? But the king does not have an answer to that question. He only knows that the sword has a value that transcends that of an ordinary weapon, and that letting this sword go so casually must have been for some reason. But he realizes that he is not thinking properly since his father also noticed the sense of unrest hanging over his country. So if he made that decision, he must be relying on the strength of his spirit, so that Noor may serve in future situations that might occur. Since if he was capable of defeating a Minotaur and saving his sister Line, he must be someone strong enough to be used as a secret weapon. Now we see Noor and Line, who are at a food stall in the village, where he asks whether it is normal for her to be seen in such places. Since as she is a princess, he is not sure whether there might be any inconvenience. Lion replies that he does not need to worry, because after all, she is also an adventurer. Nor does not concern himself with dealing with royalty and comments that he will go to the guild after eating, which seems like a great idea, and she offers to accompany her instructor. But Noor becomes embarrassed when she calls him sensei, since he does not feel important enough to be treated in that way. But the more he tries to clarify the misunderstanding, the more complicated the situation becomes. Furthermore, he follows him everywhere as if it were completely normal. And while eating, they consider accepting a job from the guild. And thus, with time, Lion will finally be able to realize that he is someone very ordinary. And then she will distance herself from him once and for all. And when they arrive at the guild, the leader asks why he still continues with Princess Line, although she becomes annoyed and lets him know that she is also an adventurer. So, it is unnecessary for him to add royal titles such as princess. The somewhat muscular young man feels embarrassed and whispers to Noor that if there is any other problem, he can inform him. He replies that it is something complicated to explain, but the only thing he wants now is to be given a job that can be done by 2 people. The leader knows that Line holds a silver B rank position and offers a job to hunt goblins around the capital. and Noor becomes shocked since those monsters are the ones that all adventurers face when they wish to test their abilities. So he asks whether he can truly accept that kind of task. The young man replies that Lion can accept jobs on her own, but if he takes her as a companion, whatever happens to her will be his responsibility. Noor becomes emotional because of the incredible opportunity, but afterward, he thinks that he might be taking advantage of Lin's rank to raise his own level, which is the opposite of what he wants, since that way she would return home as quickly as possible. But when he sees Lion's expression, he feels ashamed for not being important enough for her to form a party with him. So he asks her whether she truly agrees with this, since he would be relying on her B-rank status to accept jobs. But she says that there is no problem at all as long as she can help him or do something for her sensei. He only needs to ask. Noor feels pathetic for having to depend on a small child in order to accept these jobs. So he decides to take advantage of this opportunity, since in that way he will be able to fulfill one of his personal goals. Then, as they are about to depart, the leader stops them, saying that they still have not informed where they must go. He was already very excited, simply because he was going to hunt goblins. And after that, the leader approves the job and advises them to be very careful, since although goblins have a very low threat level, that does not mean he will be safe at every moment. At that moment, Lion teaches him that he must go to the forest of beasts and report everything that happened. Usually, a goblin's ear is enough to prove that the mission was successful, but he must not forget to bring it, since without it, he will not be able to receive compensation for any job. Furthermore, he also informs them that the number of goblins has decreased considerably, and if there is time left after the job, he could gather some herbs or medicinal plants. Noor understands the advice and leaves with Lion to complete his mission. And once in the forest of beasts, Noor marvels at seeing that the trees are enormous and dense, very different from what he is used to seeing. And at that moment, he considers that he should have information about the monsters he will face. He asks Lion what kind of creatures goblins are. She replies that normally they hunt small animals as prey and eat fruits from trees, but they have also been attacking humans very aggressively in order to feed. And if they are allowed to do whatever they want, their population will grow excessively to the point that it would cause a food shortage. For that reason, adventurers hunt them regularly in order to control them. On the other hand, the abundance of the forest's ecological system depends on how many goblins exist in the area, since it is not good to hunt them to extinction because they are vital to the forest. They are used as training targets or to generate income for beginner adventurers, so they are vital either way. Noor realizes that Lion not only possesses incredible abilities, but also has a great deal of knowledge. He thinks that it will be very difficult to teach her anything she does not already know. But after that, the forest begins to grow dark. Lion tries to locate them with magic, but she cannot find anything, although she senses a signal very similar to that of a monster, and they move deeper and deeper into the forest. Along the way, Noor notices that it is getting darker, but Lion comments that goblins appreciate such places and may be nearby. But suddenly she discovers that the signal she was tracking was right in front of them, and that now it has disappeared. However, they head toward a location, but when they arrive, they discover that it is completely empty. Apparently empty because at that moment, Noor notices something and they come across the body of a monster soaked in blood floating in the air. Lion uses her magic to reveal what is invisible, and a gigantic goblin appears before them. Noor is surprised when he sees it, because although he imagined it as green walking on two legs and with piercing eyes, in reality it turned out to be much larger than he imagined. At that moment, the goblin arms itself with a tree, and Noor notices that Lion is frightened, which is quite logical, since although she is blessed with absurd ability, she still has little real combat experience. Therefore, he tries to calm her, commenting that they are only facing a simple goblin. Lion is startled because she knows that it is not a simple goblin. It is an emperor monster, a subspecies among the monsters of humanity. The Goblin King is considered an extremely great threat, and it was created through genetic manipulation by humans. Besides being cannibalistic and feeding on its own kind, since in that way it can take their powers and become much stronger. But upon hearing the determined words of her master, she realizes that she is not alone, and she thinks that perhaps Nora's plan in accepting this mission was to use it as a way to eliminate a powerful goblin emperor. The girl creates her own scenarios inside her head, and both of them prepare to fight the monster. Then the goblin emperor charges quickly toward them, and Noor uses his parries, deflecting each of its attacks. He realizes that the goblin is trying to corner him, but he uses parry once more and unbalances the enemy. He quickly orders Lion to attack, and she uses her ice and wind magic against it. But the Emperor is very fast and her attacks cannot hit him. The monster grabs a huge tree and throws it violently at Lion. But Noor manages to deflect it, and he begins dodging all the attacks, while Lion tries to find its weak point. Then she notices the Mona stone on its forehead, and tells Noor that if they manage to remove it, they can defeat it. But at that moment, the Emperor throws several logs because it discovered that Noor cannot block all of them at once. And when they no longer knew what to do, Lion uses a wind blast, causing a massive explosion throughout the forest. After things calm down, Lion confirms that the goblin regenerates using the power of the stone in its forehead. And if they continue like this, sooner or later they will run out of energy. At that moment, Noor thinks of something and asks if she can redirect the wind blast toward his sword. She replies that it is such a powerful move that it could demolish the walls of a castle if used directly on him, and it could even kill him. But Noor says it will not hit him directly, and that he will only use it as a boost to reach the monster. When she does it, the attack strikes No, and for a moment he nearly dies. But he uses his physical enhancement to control his speed. He dodges the goblin's attacks and advances straight toward it. With a single strike, he manages to dislodge the gem from the monster's forehead, and the Goblin Emperor goes mad. And once they have the gem in their hands, Noor asks her to finish it. He also asks her to do it quickly, because although it is a monster, he does not want it to suffer. Lion accepts and quickly burns the goblin until it is completely incinerated. Though honestly, dying burned is probably not very pleasant. Right after that, Noor stands before it and prays for the goblin's soul, assuring that he will refrain from killing goblins for now. And while he looks at the sky, he realizes he still has much to train since he continues to be very weak. On that occasion, he relied on luck and almost died. But fortunately, nothing worse happened. Elsewhere, we see several people reporting what happened to Rain. He is surprised by the strength Noor demonstrated, because according to the reports, that Goblin Emperor was many times larger than a Goblin King. At that moment, his informants tell him that the gem could be the heart of a demon coming directly from the holy theocracy of Mitra. Rain thinks that the Magic Empire is probably responsible for everything. And according to Lime, the monster may have been there for several days, which surprises Rain since, if that were the case, his secret agents should have noticed it, unless the seal was so strong that it could not be detected. Meanwhile, Noor is at the guild together with Line. He is very happy that he was able to complete the job without problems. But to be honest, he does not know what would have happened to him if Lady Lion had not been there. At that moment, he comments about the Mona stone the goblin had. The leader asks if he is sure that what he faced was really a goblin. He answers yes, and Lion also confirms it was. The leader asks no more questions and requests proof of the kill. They look at each other and immediately think they are in trouble because they forgot to take the goblin's ear. And obviously they cannot go back to get it, since they reduced the goblin to ashes. Elsewhere, we see Rain reading some letters that contain information about a similar incident to what happened in the Forest of Beasts. He wonders how the enemy managed to infiltrate so deeply into his own country. He quickly orders all members who possess tracking and detection abilities to form groups and head to the designated zones, and also orders the 6 sovereigns to urgently accompany them. After they depart, he questions how he did not notice sooner, since those individuals from the Magic Empire desire the dungeon's treasures so much that they were willing to go to war to completely destroy the country, risking millions of innocent lives in the chaos. Soon after, we see Noor eating together with Lime while they give thanks for finally being compensated for their first job with a few small jewels. He should not expect much since goblin hunting pays very little, but that was not an ordinary goblin, so they should earn more, right? Noor then looks at her and asks how much longer Lion intends to stay with him, since her father should be worried about her. But after finishing her meal, Lynn says goodbye. She comments that she has already done enough for that day and that she plans to return home. However, she also tells him that she will continue helping him in the days ahead, no matter what happened. Suddenly, Rain appears and greets No. He wastes no time and asks him to go to the Mountain District City the next morning, but he cannot give many details for now. He only provides a carriage and an escort for him, hoping he will cooperate kindly with them. Noor accepts and says he will pack for the trip. Rain thanks him and says he will pay very well and will also cover all travel expenses, even though he hardly believes it. Noor is the only person he can trust at this moment. Noor does not understand anything that is being said, but he accepts the request through the guild. The guild master tells him to relax and eat, since the journey will be long, and that he should enjoy the preferential treatment given to him. But the real reason he accepted this task is because he has never ridden in a carriage before and wanted to experience it. As they continue their journey, he watches the beautiful scenery, thinking that someone like him only knows a few places in the capital, but traveling and learning is the greatest reward for him. He hopes to be lucky enough to visit other countries someday. At that moment, he asks Lynn if she is not interested in looking at the scenery, since wheat harvest season is almost here and it would be interesting to see. They watch the wheat fields while Nora thinks he only wanted to become an ordinary adventurer so he could travel and see the world on his own. Before all this, we see how Rain had explained that first they would travel northwest of the capital by carriage toward a mountainous district of Thoros, where they would stay for some time, and if nothing strange happened, they would cross the mountains to reach the neighboring land, the holy theocracy of Mitra. Returning to the present, Lynn worries and hopes nothing bad happens along the way. In Circumlex's replies that nothing will happen and that she does not need to worry since she is there if things get complicated. Although in truth, she is there because of a secret order from the king, who revealed that she must take Noria, his sister, out of the country, because the capital would soon face an unprecedented crisis and would likely be destroyed. She asked whether her sister knew anything about it, but Rain said no, because if she knew, she would certainly insist on staying with them. That is why he sent Lynn with her, since she is the only person he can trust to protect his dear sister and take her somewhere safe. Later, while resting along the road, Circumflex apologizes to No for involving him in all this trouble. But he says it is not a big deal, since she makes it sound like completing a simple trip is very difficult. He asks whether something very serious has happened, and says she was just thinking about something, since keeping him safe is one of her responsibilities. But he should not worry about danger, because she possesses the strongest shield. Noor does not understand what she is talking about, since he sees none. So as she demonstrates her power and summons a magical shield, telling him to hide behind her whenever he feels in grave danger. Noor thanks her, and while watching he remembers, or rather tries to remember, poor Gilbert, but he cannot recall his name. He realized, as she is extremely powerful just like Gilbert, and she tells him he has incredible talent as she remembers when she first discovered her power, shortly after she had been taken to an orphanage. There she showed her ability to another orphan, but it caused trouble. She accidentally hurt someone, but a cleric healed the girl's wound, and she asked to demonstrate her power. The sovereign mage was also present, and upon seeing it, he said it was an extremely rare gift considered a blessing from the heavens. She can transform it into a blade to cut anything or into a shield. Depending on how she used her power, she could easily annihilate an entire country. She was then taken in by Dalga, the sovereign of the shield. She learned from each of them how to use her power properly. But even so, she could not dispel the fear she felt of hurting someone again. And because of that, she began to distance herself from everyone until she met Noor. And when she heard his name, she remembered she had heard it before. During one of her trainings with her adoptive father, an incident happened like any other in the city. He wished that his best student, Noor, had been present at that moment, and that surprised her since she did not know who that man was. But she knew one thing. He was important enough for her father to acknowledge him that way. And although she was with him, the emotions gathering inside her were very intense. They were very strange because it was the first time she felt envy towards someone, and it became worse after he appeared before her. But she is the shield of the kingdom of clays, and she cannot allow her dark thoughts to blind her. Meanwhile, Noor is observing the scenery when he notices a path in the middle of the wheat harvest. He tells Anise that it seems he saw something moving in the field. Lynn looks and discovers an invisible darkness marching through the crops, harvesting them. She quickly uses a magical covering, and her spell reveals the monster's location. Then we see the capital where mass destruction had already begun. A knight informs the king that several magical beasts had appeared throughout the royal capital. Although the warrior corps is in charge, they do not have enough soldiers to eliminate them all. The king orders the swordsmen to block the carriages to contain them, while the knights must evacuate the citizens and redirect them. And he also orders the secret corps and hunters to send as many reinforcements as possible. The knight departs and the king curses Dara for being so greedy that he wants to fulfill his threat to see them kneel. The king says all this is the beginning of the end, and his father asks where the sovereigns are. He answers that they are scattered in various places fighting powerful monsters, and we see them battling several of them. Returning to an ease before this incident, a young woman is seen walking beside a giant monster, murmuring that she needs to destroy them all. But when Lynn uses her covering to break the barrier, the monster strikes quickly. At that moment, Lynn realizes the monster is the Black Death Dragon and wonders what such a cruel creature is doing there. The dragon is about to attack, but No intervenes quickly. Lynn tries to stop him, but No manages to block the dragon's attack. He begins dodging its strikes. while Anis tells Lion that that boy did not appear alongside the dragon by chance when he used a certain ability. The dragon also appeared. Lion remembers a conversation with her brother who had warned her about the demon fold. They are semi-humans who possess the special ability to form a mental bond with monsters at will. There are records from 200 years ago when the holy theocracy was annihilated by semi-humans who controlled powerful monster, but they were hunted by humans until nearly extinct. Their descendants still exist and must harbor deadly hatred toward humans. They are certain that this demon fold intended to bring the monster to the royal capital to complete its destruction. But he did not expect someone to use an anicaps spell and make him lose control of the dragon. But Noor does not care. He jumps in hastily without knowing who the real enemy is. He continues defending that boy, and Lion tells Anis that no matter what they must help him. But Anis stops her because she cannot allow herself to help him again. Noor realizes the dragon is much slower and less powerful than the goblin, and if he can endure until the girls arrive, he could win. But unfortunately, the dragon launches a black fireball. Noor cannot dodge because it would hit the boy, so he decides to cut it with his sword, but ends up poisoned. Unable to control his body, his vision begins to darken. At that moment, he remembers what Anis used to say and realizes this is not a normal monster. It is a venomous one. Lion sees her sensei is close to death and desperately tries to help him. But Anis stops her again, reminding her that her duty is to protect her, and she cannot allow her to die that way. She then covers them with her shield. The dragon notices their presence and releases a poisonous breath, but Anis manages to block it, while Lin uses purification, yet fails. Anis laments for No, but she is only a simple soldier with a duty to fulfill. She chose this path because she admired her father, and before she can continue thinking, she sees No. Despite everything, he keeps fighting under his terrible conditions. At that moment, he once again remembers the words of his father, understanding what he wanted to say. Since Noor would do whatever was necessary to protect someone, even if he had to sacrifice himself, thus becoming a true shield. The dragon then unleashes another poisonous breath, but Noor manages to dodge it. He ends up collapsing, exhausted, onto the ground. He thinks that perhaps his plan has worked, but before anything else, we see little Noor as a small boy who is imprisoned together with others of his kind, since in the region, incredible rewards were offered for all demons who survived the war. They were fed as if they were animals, and after eating, they were brutally abused by the prison chief. Amid the situation, the child could only question the reason for being mistreated, which greatly irritates the chief, who ends up striking his face. He even imposes a punishment, since for days he will only be allowed to drink water. But the small child never revealed himself to them, because he felt that one day he might understand humans and experience what they felt. And one day they discovered that he had the ability to read their minds. From that point on, their hatred toward him increased even more. He was beaten and kicked every day without any reason, reaching the point that his body became accustomed to the sensation of pain. And after so much suffering, the chief offered him an opportunity to eat something delicious if he followed his orders precisely. At that moment, he shows the imprisoned beast and orders him to take it to the city so it can kill all the people. The boy ends up falling into a dilemma, since if he obeys, he will obtain rewards, and otherwise he will be punished for his entire life. Although he knows they promise things to him and to his friends and never truly fulfill them, and end up assaulting them anyway. Even so, he decided to obey since it is better to try, and if he has to kill so that he and his friends are not harmed, he will do it. And then we see him leading the creature toward the city until he is intercepted by Lion, while No runs desperately to defend him. Then we see another flashback. No is on the mountain of his village searching for something to eat. He gathers several ingredients and then cooks them to eat. At that moment, he remembers that if his mother were still alive, she would not allow him to eat the things he eats now. He eats calmly, and shortly afterward, we see how the entire house is in complete disarray. Unexpectedly, we see Noor dying and bleeding on the ground because by chance, he had unknowingly collected a mushroom called dragon's pishin. He comments that its poison is lethal. In fact, it is so powerful that it could even kill dragons. Some foolish people tried to taste a little, but nearly lost their lives in the attempt. And here is a warning. Do not eat unknown mushrooms or you can suffer greatly. Noor is paralyzed and extremely nauseated and cannot feel any part of his body. But he remains conscious thanks to his minor healing ability. He must be very careful. or he might end up vomiting blood, and Noor manages with difficulty to drag himself to the bathroom of his house. But he faints upon arriving, and when he awakens, he has no idea how long he remained unconscious. Yet he rises quickly and goes to train. But when he thrusts forward, he ends up collapsing since he still does not have sufficient strength. He tries to stand but begins to vomit blood and falls to the ground once again. Realizing that his organs are deteriorating and that if he does not take proper care, he will die. And so he remained day after day, waiting for the moment of his death. Several weeks later, he simply recovered and the bleeding had completely stopped. And that day, he felt a voracious hunger since he had not eaten anything since the incident. And although he wished to go out to hunt some boars, his body was still not completely healthy and required rest. But when he decided to go hunting, he forced his body and departed. Then he suffered a small accident and ended up being bitten by a serpent. He was in serious trouble. First it was the poisonous mushroom, and now a serpent. This man was extremely unlucky. At that moment he lay down, feeling as if his death was approaching ever closer. He also thought about how much misfortune he had faced in his short life. But then he realized that the venom did not affect him, and all the symptoms he thought he was feeling simply disappeared. He set aside those foolish thoughts and went to cook the serpent, which ended up biting him again. But as the saying goes, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Although his mother had firmly warned him never to eat a poisonous serpent, no matter how delicious it might be, his body had developed resistance to venom, so he decided to take full advantage of it. He made skewers of serpent meat, and upon eating it, he was astonished to discover that it was the best meat he had ever tasted in his life. Now, in another scene, we see that he was almost fully recovered after eating all the serpent skewers. Since he no longer had anything to worry about, he thought about going out to hunt a little more the next day. But before that, he wanted to confirm whether he was truly resistant to poison. So he let a snake bite his arm, going a bit too far. However, he realized that the venom was not as strong as before and did not seem to affect him. He concluded that this was probably due to the dragon predation mushroom he had eaten earlier, and that he likely gained a new ability while struggling to survive. Feeling happy about discovering something incredible after so much misfortune, he decided to venture out to test whether he had any other poison-related abilities. After that, he began searching for completely poisonous plants and animals, trying to develop his new ability. But in truth, he nearly died because some of them were extremely dangerous, and he always ended up saving himself with his minor healing ability. Even so, he did not acquire the new abilities he had hoped for. Instead, he discovered poisonous animals and plants that were surprisingly tasty. Although some did not have much flavor, they were still very nutritious, including the dragon predation mushroom, which he ate once a week. Over time, the bleeding he experienced became less severe. He basically became somewhat masochistic toward poison. Returning to the present, Noor quickly rises from the ground, coughing up a little blood because he is still not fully accustomed to the venom of the poisonous dragon. But now he is completely adapted. He is the Maharaja of poisons. This will no longer be a major problem for him, and he observes that there is a faint poison in the air. It is different from before when he had to use minor healing many times, but he now appears to be in perfect condition. He wonders whether he can truly deal with that terrifying monster on his own. Its claws are disgusting and its deadly breath is bizarre. The dragon draws in the air and channels its new attack, and when it is about to fire, Noor quickly grabs his sword and takes advantage of its vulnerability. Striking its throat, the dragon cannot expel the venom, and it ends up rupturing its own back and damaging its entire body. Lion and Anise are in shock upon witnessing this battle, while Noor observes the shattered body of the beast, stating that its attack would not work twice against him. At that moment, he realized something, and it is that he had been extremely focused during the battle and had completely forgotten the incredible flavor that dragon might have, or frog. He does not know what this thing actually is. It looks like a toad, to be honest, does it not? It is not a dragon. But when he is eager to leave everything and go cook that delicious meat, he remembers that this is not the moment to eat since he must make sure that everyone is safe. He quickly looks at the boy and asks whether he is all right. And he also asks what on earth he was doing in that place. But the boy becomes frightened and replies that in fact, he was the one leading the monster to the city under orders from a certain person. Noor does not wait for him to finish speaking, and unconsciously, he thinks that the boy was leading the beast so they could begin eating, because according to him, keeping food fresh during transport is the best idea. And he even says that the boy probably used that camouflage ability to avoid bandits and not have any trouble. This man is an idiot. But anyway, the boy does not understand what goes on in his mind, since supposedly he was meant to be a villain, and he was guiding the creature to the city to destroy it. While Noor apologizes to him because in the mind of this madman, he destroyed the boy's valuable merchandise. But he also promises that he will compensate all his losses and will work diligently to obtain the money. The boy replies that it is not necessary, and Noor finally uses a bit of logic, thinking that it is impossible that a child like him could force a monster like that. Furthermore, he asks how on earth he stayed with that monster the entire way without being attacked earlier. The boy answers that it is due to his power since he can manipulate monsters. Noor is surprised to hear this, since he had never heard of such an ability. Noor asks whether this is a divine gift or something similar, but he explains that it is not a power that can be granted but rather an innate ability. He finishes by mentioning that he truly is a demon, and that all his friends possess the same ability, revealing that for that very reason, many people fear and hate him. He expected a reaction of contempt from Noor, but it is exactly the opposite. He feels no hatred and even less fear. He feels envy for being able to control animals to help on farms. He could control birds to make deliveries, and he would not have to worry about wild animals when night fell. Moreover, he does not care in the slightest about what other people think. To him, this is an extremely impressive ability. He remains thoughtful as he hears all these praises that Noor directed at him. He quickly remembers part of his past, where he was beaten and mistreated. Because of that, he began to cry and asked whether he could truly be useful for anything. Noor observes and thinks that this boy was granted a very powerful innate ability unlike himself. But he does not think about his potential and what he could become. He gently pats his head and mentions that although not now, he will always be able to be useful in the future, assuring him that he will be able to over any challenge as long as Rollo firmly believes in his own potential. At that moment, Anis and Line approach him to check whether everything is all right. Meanwhile, Anis observes Noor astonished since she cannot believe that a human can rival the power of a dragon. She notices that all the wounds on his arm have disappeared and remembers the aura that Noor used during the battle. It was very similar to that of a sovereign cleric, but only those who train their body and mind to an absolute level can emit it. Furthermore, he can purify everything he touches, and that alone is no longer considered a mere ability, but rather a gift from the gods. For those who have trained until reaching that level, even a sovereign cleric must train for 40 years to obtain it. While thinking that Noor seems far too young to have achieved this, Anis obtains some information about the boy. He introduces himself as Rollo, and at that moment recounts everything he experienced and what he was about to do, while everyone sympathizes with him for what he had endured. But he is still a demon, and his next destination is the holy theocracy of Mitra, a city that was nearly destroyed by demons, and whose citizens feel intense hatred toward them, making it very difficult to guarantee his safety in a city like that. But while they think of a safe way to transport him, suddenly a stranger appears, who tells them that Rollo should suffer a very painful death. He looks at the dragon and realizes that it is the package that the person mentioned. He is surprised to see Noor, since he touched the contaminating aura directly and is still alive. He asks what exactly he did, while Noor apologizes for having destroyed his package, since it must have been very important to them. He promptly asks whether he is the person who assigned the task to Rollo. He answers that there is no need to apologize, since nothing is more important to him than that package, and he is only there because he was sent to carry out a job, which is to take that little demon with him. Noor becomes happy because he thinks it is a friend who came to help him, but the man mentions that his body could be worth a great deal of money alive or dead. So he quickly advances toward No. Fortunately, our hero blocks, while realizing that he truly only wants to capture him. The assassin mentions that he must surrender and simply give up once and for all, since if he captures him, he will obtain a great reward, and immediately he attacks Noor again. Noor is very confused since he thought the man was a friend and wanted to take Rollo to a safe place. They then fight fiercely while the assassin states that he does not intend to waste time with him and prepares to eliminate him at that very moment. And then he disappears and quickly appears again above, No striking him brutally with his sword. He is so fast that he seems to form clones while attacking. No begins to retreat. Although he manages to block everything, he realizes that the man is extremely strong and very fast, and any carelessness could cost him his life since the blows of his sword are as powerful as the charges of that bull he fought before. Rollo watches him fight depressed because he thinks that this man will win, and then the day will finally come when he will die. The battle is so overwhelming that the attacks release great waves of wind, and then raises her shield, telling Lion to withdraw since she will be injured if she stays there. But she watches in surprise because that individual is so fast that not even Noor can follow his movements. Enis explains that it is extremely difficult not to face this person, since he is a former S-rank adventurer, the Dead Man. But she could not find the records confirming that the hunt had been successful. The red-haired man then tells her that the case was resolved, but does not explain how. The Sovereign of the Sword then comments to her that this is the case of the Dead Man, a person who was extremely strong and even became an S-rank adventurer. Gilbert mentions that he would have liked to fight him, but his master warned him that he would not recommend it, since the man was absurdly powerful. The mage comments that this man was a prodigy at only years old. He already possessed such great power that he earned the title of Dragon Hunter. By the time he was promoted to S rank, something that would take an entire lifetime for anyone else. Rumors say he was an orphan of a wealthy merchant, but the truth still remains a mystery. Sadhu studied many sword and magic techniques and also reached an extraordinary level of alchemy. He truly stood out, and over time his career became as admired as it was envied, since throughout his life he was always the center of attention, until the day an incident occurred where a merchant family of people, including children and servants, were completely killed. He was responsible, and when he was interrogated about why he would do such a thing, he simply answered that it was because someone asked him to. To him, the request was very easy, and the reward was enormous. So why not do it? Everyone was shocked to see him admit it so shamelessly, without feeling the slightest bit of remorse. And from that moment on, his name sank into the terror of people's mind. They then decided that Sadhu should be stripped of his adventurous status, since it was controversial to keep him in the kingdom. And after accepting such a horrible request, it was obvious that this decision would be made indirectly. He had turned the guild into an organization of assassins. But there were also those who refused to expel him, since an adventurer like him could save many lives. Besides all the contributions he had already made to the guild, they could not simply ignore that. So they reached a conclusion. The incident was covered up, and he continued carrying out missions as if nothing had happened. Since he did not understand the concept of good or evil to him, it made no difference. He could complete all his missions and even wipe out entire armies without concern or assistance. He could even assassinate every member of a royal family if necessary. People of that time could not understand what was happening, but it was very similar to a goblin hunt, where he wiped out the entire rule of a nation. And since no one could face him, the guild decided that killing him was impossible. So it was recorded in the books that he had died only as a cover, so no one would attempt such madness. Back in the present, Sadhu continues fighting No, but notices that his weapons keep breaking when they strike him. He is extremely surprised because he expected Mythil to break, but never Aura Column or Dragon Bone blades, which were practically unbreakable. Noor apologizes for breaking his weapons and asks how he keeps attacking out of nowhere. Sadhu simply ignores him and says he feels something is wrong about him, since it is impossible for someone like him to withstand a battle against him for so long. He also comments on the weapon No is using, saying it seems extraordinary, but he does not care because it is time to end everything. He then says he will show all his tricks. He throws his sword into the sky, and a red aura begins turning silver, and Sadhu states that this is his strongest attack, called Silver Cross. Noor may take all the time he wants to destroy it if he is capable. The swords rapidly fly toward No as he blocks a series of them. However, he realizes he cannot block them all, so he turns to defend little Rollo. He parries many of them and blocks the rest with his own body. Enis watches and sees the situation worsening, since the number of swords keeps increasing, and if he continues using this strategy, he will likely die. She then decides to help him, but remembers that her life is devoted to protecting the princess. And while thinking about what to do, she looks at Line and asks for permission to help. Nor while he observes that crosses are spreading everywhere. Although he manages to block many and uses healing to recover from those he cannot keep this up for long. At that moment, another wave of crosses is about to strike him, but fortunately, Anis appears with the divine shield. She apologizes for not helping earlier, saying her duty was to protect Lion's life, although she also cannot allow him to die. She continuously blocks the silver crosses, and tells Noble able to hold out for long, and that she can only defend him, not attack, and tells him that he needs to come up with some brilliant idea quickly. Noor realizes that the crosses are searching for a way to pierce the barrier as if they were living beings. When he looks at the ground, he notices that pieces of the poisonous frog still remain. He tells Anis that at his signal, she should deactivate the barrier and grab the remains of the frogs. While strengthening her body, he then gives the order to Anis and throws them forcefully toward the crosses, breaking several of them. Little by little, they destroy them all and realize that Sadhu has disappeared. He suddenly reappears trying to attack in ease, but Noor blocks his strike. Sadhu's dagger ends up breaking, and he complains because it was already his last one. Noor stops and asks if he is sure he wants to keep fighting. He answers that he does not since he is tired and has had enough for that day. As he is about to leave, he warns Noor that they may meet again very soon since there will be a great festival in the royal capital. Although he himself does not know why, he is very eager to see what will happen. Before leaving, he tells Noor that he is a very strange person, even though he has many along his path. Noor is without a doubt the worst. At that moment, he walks away, and Noor sighs in relief now that everything has finally ended. After that, he wonders what Sadhu meant about the capital's festival. Noor then says it is better for them to return, since they are not very far and could arrive in time. Rollo suddenly begins trembling and warns them that if they return to the capital, they will die because he saw the most dangerous person in the world marching there at that very moment. When that person arrives, the capital will be massacred, and the Black Dragon will be nothing compared to him. Lion tells Anise they must return to the capital immediately, since the situation is very serious. But Anise says they cannot do that since she has direct orders from her brother. However, Lee knows her brother well and understands that he acts to protect her. But if she does nothing and only obeys, she might find her brother dead when she goes looking for him. That is why she orders them to return now to help. In understands and says it is time to go back to the capital, but she must remain by her side at all times to protect her. Despite the danger, Rollo offers to go as well because even if he is not much help, the person controlling the beasts is probably his friend, and he might be able to convince him to stop. And so they all decide to return to the capital. Meanwhile, Rain looks at the capital completely destroyed and thinks the enemy has done nothing more than toy with them. It is only a matter of time before a second or third attack comes. At that moment, a guard approaches to report the situation about his subordinates. Rain wonders where the next attack will come from. Whether from the south or the north, the soldier mentions that fortunately, no flying creatures have been confirmed. But at that instant, as he looks at the sky, he notices something very strange. He uses magic and reveals the location of a massive black dragon. But upon observing it more closely, he realizes it is not just any black dragon, but a calamity black dragon. In a flashback, we see Noor's father telling the story of dragon hunters who killed evil dragon. Afterward, they would collect their claws, teeth, scales, and bones to create high-quality materials such as weapons, medicines, and similar things to bring into the world. Little Noor becomes excited and tells his father he wants to be a dragon hunter when he grows up. But his father laughs, warning him that dragons are incredibly powerful, capable of destroying entire continents with their massive flames, and that someone as small as him could be eaten in a single bite. Noor then returns from his memory, and they are nearly reaching the capital. Suddenly, Lin spots the calamity dragon and is left in shock at the creature's monstrous size. It soars over the entire city. Rain watches in disbelief, since the last time it had been asleep for years. For someone to awaken it, they would need overwhelming power and immense will. For a moment, he can only think about giving up, but he knows his subordinates are waiting for his orders, so he commands the immediate evacuation of everyone to shelters. He orders them to be sent outside the royal capital. Anyone who wishes to remain for any reason must be removed by force. From that moment on, no citizen is authorized to stay there. Meanwhile, the dragon roars ferociously, and the archers try to suppress their fear as they prepare to fire. At that moment, each of the sovereigns prepares to face their enemy. Gilbert quickly approaches the king to inform him that all the people are being evacuated and that he should also hurry to seek shelter. But the king tells him that he is also a warrior, and his duty is to defend his kingdom and its people from all adversities. Therefore, he simply cannot stand by and watch the destruction of his realm. On the other side, we see Amise observing what is happening in the city, while Lion is on the ground, discouraged, sadly thinking that her father will surely serve as a shield against this calamity, since he is the strongest warrior of the Kingdom of Clash. She considers facing it together with the power of the 6 sovereigns, but believes that in the end only destruction will remain for them and for the entire capital. Noor then comments that he had never seen a dragon in person, and it is truly larger than he imagined. They decide to return, thinking they might still arrive in time to rescue them. Line asks how they could possibly get there in time with such a distance. Neither by carriage nor by running would they make it in time. But Noor assures her that after defeating the goblin, he gained great confidence and proposes using the same technique they used before, the wind burst. She hesitates a little, because the situation in the city is dangerous for them alone, and that wind burst attack will definitely not be weak. But Noor talks about the power they will receive, and tells her not to worry since he will not come out injured. Well, actually, it will hurt him a lot. But as her master, he must set an example. Lion gets annoyed at how pessimistic he sounds all the time. He is still her master and is trying to help them gain time. So, she quickly drops the nonsense and decides to listen to him. In another scene, we see the king walking through the castle corridors, remembering that this entire conflict began because he refused to grant all the kingdom's resources to the emperor. He was willing to give some, but not everything, because those resources are what sustain his kingdom. He lacks land and other means to survive. The emperor took this proposal very badly since he did not want a portion. He wanted everything. And because the king would not surrender at all, he decided to show how easy it was to destroy a small country like his with his immense military power, the greatest in the world. In peaceful times, that is true. But even so, he would need to use much of his strength to force recognition, because defeating them would not be simple. The king then climbs to the top of the castle, remembering the young lion in that very place, thinking that a poor exchange of words with the emperor pushed his entire kingdom into this situation. Trusting that he has entrusted all the nation's forces to Rain's son, he looks at the dragon, thinking that perhaps it cannot be completely eradicated, but he will at least take one eye from that cursed creature. Meanwhile, Anis activates her divine shield in a cylindrical form and asks Noor to place his hand in front while keeping his sword behind him. Lion quickly begins enhancing them with multiple spells, and Noor is startled because these spells seem far stronger than before. Lion replies that he is correct because she is reinforcing the shield with the powerful magic taught by Sovereign Oaken. The spells include multi-weight, 6 choruses, and wind burst. She finishes by striking Norley with her magic, and Noor launches forward rapidly toward the kingdom. At that moment, the dragon positions itself before the king and prepares to unleash fire. The king and the others watch from a distance, saying that this is the breath of the light of destruction, the same attack that once destroyed an entire kingdom. The king feels the overwhelming power before his eyes, but he still has a final trump card. He quickly draws his sword of light, an explosive blade. It channels all the wielder's mana into a single devastating attack, but in exchange it sacrifices the user's entire life. Each of the sovereigns watches from afar as the king finishes channeling all his power into the sword. While the dragon is about to release its breath, just as they are about to collide, Noor suddenly appears at high speed right in front of the dragon. His strike deflects the attack in another direction, and the dragon unexpectedly crashes down, though it quickly rises again, confused about what is happening. It looks at No, thinking that the small boy is trying to block its path. It roars and immediately attacks with its massive tail, but Noor parries it aside, causing the dragon to fall once more. This dragon has absolutely no balance at all. At that moment, Noor remembers how he almost died from Lion's magic earlier, and even literally lost consciousness for a moment. Fortunately, he managed to awaken and quickly enhance his body with magic, and that allowed him to run and leap at high speed. But when he sees the great dragon almost in front of him, he gets startled because he is about to collide. But fortunately, everything turns out fine since he managed to perform a solid block. But that magic is far too powerful to be used against people, and next time he will warn them not to use that since the impact was so great that it even made a hole in the clouds. At that moment, he notices how the dragon is much more irritated than before, and he knows that the only option he has is to try to resist against it until the girls arrive. They manage to reach the city, noticing all the damage that was caused by the battle between the dragon and No. But suddenly a stone is thrown in their direction, and they end up falling off their horses. Any Circumflex activates her shield, protecting herself from the damage, and Line notices 3 goblin emperors approaching them. They are a bit smaller than the one Noor faced, but they are still fierce monsters that are in a completely different league from her. But she also knows she must help her mentor somehow, since compared to fighting the dragon, these little goblins should be nothing. They advance toward them, and Elle uses her ice magic, but they are too fast for it to have any effect. Rollo apologizes for not having done anything until now, and quickly he controls them and immobilizes all of them completely. They are surprised, but Lion quickly takes advantage of their distraction to freeze them, and any Circumflex summons the divine sword, with which she launches herself toward them and shatters them. At that moment, Lynn observes Rollo and realizes that he is extremely strong since with just a single word, he managed to immobilize them. That is not thanks to his race, but to him who possesses incredible power. But just as he is powerful, he also had the courage to stand up and try to help his master No. And returning to him, he continues fighting the dragon, dodging each of its powerful attacks, and he manages to face it. And the dragon is shocked because both he and his sword are very powerful, since after so many blows, the dragon delivered. He should already have been completely broken, but he manages to dodge all of them with great ease. And then he thinks about ending everything at once, and he rises into the air, unleashing upon him a great breath of destructive light. The king and the others watch in terror, but he quickly deflects the attack toward the sky, causing a huge explosion. After that, the dragon becomes irritated upon seeing that it cannot cause even a scratch on the man, and it begins to roar desperately, while Rollo comments that they must be careful since it is very upset and frustrated at seeing someone as small as Noor manage to face it. Because the principle of dragons is that the strongest prevails overall, but it cannot defeat him, and something so small like that makes it extremely angry, and the king watches from afar. And the dragon prepares to deliver the final attack, launching itself rapidly toward No, since that way it can devour him once and for all. But No strikes it with his sword, cutting its teeth, causing the dragon to fall defeated to the ground. The dragon calms down after the impact and realizes it is completely submissive before Noor. While looking around, realizes he can obtain claws, scales, and many other materials of great usefulness for the kingdom, and those materials can be used to make weapons and medicine. But in truth, those are the words his father used to tell him about dragon hunters. He observes the submissive and calm dragon and realizes that a true hero would not desire any of that. Everyone runs toward him while the king watches how that man saved the entire kingdom. Lion approaches him and asks if he is all right. Noor answers that he is completely fine, and upon seeing Rollo, he thanks him and says he was a great help, thinking that it was Rollo who calmed the dragon. In reality, this dragon only became very tame because he slapped it across the face. Rollo says he has no idea what he is talking about, and Noor begins asking if it was not him who did it. He cannot believe it, and he definitely thinks it was Rollo's doing, but he surprised says it was not him. No then remembers what he had told him about people hating demons and being afraid of him. So he asks Rollo to please return that dragon to its home, and everyone reacts strongly since that dragon is extremely dangerous. But Noor tells them that although they are right, and the best would be to finish it there, it is not as if it had caused many disasters. Sure, Noor, it did not cause any disasters at all. Everything is perfectly fine. He explains that it is impossible to finish it now, because it is merely a tame creature waiting to die, and he prefers to avoid killing it. Lion then gives in to his request and asks Rollo to try to send the dragon back to its home, although he is not sure he can do it since that dragon is very powerful, but he will try. Noor whispers to him that everything will be fine, since Lion and any circumlex are not afraid of him. Rollo then tries, but the dragon is very serious, and says it only thinks about obeying its master, and if that is what he wishes, then that is what it will do. Rollo is surprised and informs everyone, and he asks Noor to tell the dragon to return peacefully to the place it came from, and taking advantage of the situation, also asks that it never return to harm other humans again. So he tells it, and it understands everything perfectly and prepares to depart. It takes flight, but just as it was about to leave, a massive destructive laser beam strikes it, wiping out its kind. Everyone is left in shock, and far from the kingdom, we find an emperor who smiles as he sees how the foolish kingdom of Klai has fallen before him, since they did not meet his demands. And their plan is to arrive as the saviors of the kingdom and take possession of the labyrinth. He orders his soldiers to save the minimum number of people and exterminate all those who were loyal to the king, since they must seize all the objects of the labyrinth. On top of that, they want that slow black sword, and one of the soldiers begins to reveal the location of all their army and the siege weaponry. At that moment, the emperor remembers how they reported that the dragon was a calamity that had been subdued by a dominator. He thinks it was worth paying that price, since now it will become enraged and will destroy everything, and his army will march toward the royal capital with his soldiers. They will be heavily equipped with their powerful magical swords and shields, while their elite troops will have magical armor and magical vehicles. And as if that were not enough, those wretches also possess mana generator. Then he is interrupted by Hondos, who apologizes for being frank and says he sees absolutely nothing beneficial in this war for their country in the long term. But the emperor kicks him in the face because he does not want to hear his nonsense, since no one in the world represents a threat to his empire, which stands at the technological forefront and will make sure everyone knows it. Then the group goes to where the dragon fell and tries to approach to check if it is still alive. However, Lion notices that the emperor's army is there, and they observe them. And one of the soldiers informs the emperor that that young woman is Indin, the divine shield, one of the living legends in the entire world. It is possible that because of her, the royal capital has not been completely destroyed, although if it were up to her, it would indeed already be completely ruined. But the emperor is pleased because the era in which legends ruled has come to an end. He orders them to fire the bayonet light, and his soldier says to prepare Brionet, and once prepared, The Emperor states that not even a powerful shield can overcome his technology. Let's see if Parry can withstand this. They then charge and fire while the group, upon seeing the attack, prepares themselves. Denise orders Line to flee with Rollo, but she is useless at that moment and just stands there paralyzed. Then our dear Nora arrives and parries the attack. The guy can parry everything. There is no way. The Emperor is surprised and wonders what the hell happened, and his soldier replies that it is possible it was a failure in monocondensation. The Emperor then orders another attack, while Lin tells No that Dorita has mobilized all his troops, and there may be thousands or even many more, and Noor wonders what is happening. Any Circumlex answers that it is nothing out of this world. They simply want to completely annihilate the Kingdom of Clash. She then tells them to withdraw from that place, since this is an enemy they cannot face. But little does she know, Noor is dealing with them easily here. Line asks Noor what he intends to do. He is thinking about what to do, but if there is no other option, he must fight for his life. Line seems to have been encouraged by the answer, but then they are attacked by a rain of laser beams. Circumlex quickly covers them with her shield, and in the process, orders Lion to take Rollo and flee from that place since he will buy some time. He thinks he is very bad at fighting, but he is very good at running away. And he remembers when he once fled desperately from a swarm of bees, that if he runs like crazy, everything will be fine. And he tells them he does not intend to do anything stupid since he plans to come back alive. Denise then decides to help him, giving a small push, but this time she will control her magic better. But Noor is worried, warning that he does not intend to carry out any suicidal attack. His only intention is to distract the enemies so they can escape while they focus on him. But then another wave of attacks approaches, and Anise quickly protects them with her shield. While Lin does not hesitate and sends him far away with her windburst, Noor almost met his end, but somehow he survived. While he is in the sky, he repels the enemy's attacks one after another. He acts quickly, thinking of a plan to distract them. He then decides to increase his speed and disarm everyone to prevent them from attacking the girls. Shields and swords begin to fly. While the enemy army wonders what is happening, they cannot see what is attacking them. And Noor exerts pressure, while the Emperor, upon seeing him, shows concern. The swords begin to fall, severely injuring part of the army. The Mana Towers are also destroyed, and Noor keeps dismantling everything before the Emperor's astonished eyes, who cannot believe how a single man is capable of causing all that. At that moment, Noor positions himself behind him, and the Emperor, upon seeing him, recognizes that he is the same individual who was beside any Circumlex. It is impossible that he could have crossed all that distance in a few seconds, and he feels fear thinking it might be his imagination, and becomes distressed at the thought of him, although he remembers he has the Kaiser armor, as well as his powerful sword which was made of orculum. But when he holds it, he trembles pathetically, and Noor in an instant makes his 4 cannons fly away, and his heavily armed and equipped soldiers are all wounded on the ground. Their weapons are unusable, and the armaments and defenses, which were supposedly impenetrable, were easily discarded by a single man. In that solemn moment, he stands before him, while the Emperor is shocked to see the one relic he desired most, which was the sword of the King of Claws, the only relic he truly wanted above all others. He questions why that man carries it, since he remembers that the sword was made of an unknown metal that was extremely heavy for any human to carry. Even the king himself, who possesses tremendous strength, could only wield it with both hands. And in his mind, no one could possibly be stronger than the King of Claws. But the only way to explain this entire disaster is that this man truly is stronger than the king. He thinks he is still alive because perhaps that man wants to torture and humiliate him before brutally finishing him. And surely all of this was planned by the King of Claws. The worst part is that that man carries the sword with only one hand. But at that moment, Noor smiles, and the Emperor, terrified, wets himself completely. He can no longer endure it and flees in horror from that man. But after that desperate flight, Noor feels the weight of everything he has done. His body is at its limit. He tries to stand up, but ends up vomiting blood. He just faced a dragon and then fought an entire army of people without any rest. He never thought it would end like this. But he pushed himself too far, and no matter how many wounds he has, he can simply heal everything with his minor healing. But the problem is hunger and thirst as well as fatigue. His vision then becomes blurry, and he begins to be surrounded by enemy soldiers, and as expected, he eventually collapses unconscious. Fortunately, a rain of arrows falls upon the place, and when he notices, he sees it is the sacred archer who trained him when he was young. Gilbert also arrives to rescue him, although Noor Alvo, as usual, does not remember his name. Poor man. At that moment, the sacred sword knight appears, saying he does not know who he is, but thanks him for everything he has done. He asks him to at least leave the cleanup to the 6 sovereigns, and with the precise movement of his sword, he uses the 1,000 cuts, finishing off a large number of enemies. Noor al-Villo is amazed, because he has no doubt that this ability belongs to the master swordsman, and he could never forget him. Since from the first day he saw him at the training center, he was completely fascinated. It has always been his dream to reach the essence of a true swordsman, but he never managed to learn that ability. And no matter how much he tried to copy it, he always had a limit. The Holy Cleric reminds Sid that he had told him not to kill everyone suddenly, although Oaken mentions that he should not be irrational, since that is asking too much against an army of that size. At that moment, the Great Mage summons his companions, and together they create an earth binding imprisoning all the soldiers, who are then crushed by the Saint of the Shield, who sends them flying rapidly. After that, the Great Mage Oaken creates an earth prison. An earth prisons, imprisoning all the enemy soldiers inside an enormous wall. Noor is surprised to see everyone there, because they are the ones who trained him when he was younger, although he simply faints once again. Later, Lainey heals his wounds, asking if he is all right. In addition, she recommends that he rest a little longer. But Noor does not care and already stands up since he feels much better thanks to Lainey's magic. At that moment, Sid comments that Zane obtained information from their commander during the interrogation. It seems there are no enemy forces left, but the Emperor managed to escape. Oaken is surprised upon hearing the Emperor's name, and Sid mentions that they obtained multiple testimonies from the soldiers who were in command. He comments that the Emperor was wearing golden armor. But what is truly surprising is that the Emperor was actually at the front. Noor confirms that he saw an elder with golden armor. Although all the knights seemed alike, he was the most noticeable. Oaken begins to think about the armor of the original conqueror, and he mentions that if that is the case, he must have already fled toward the border. He should still be inside the Empire, because he has to pass through all the checkpoints and a ravine bridge. But even so, T-Hay cannot pursue him without any strategy. Yet this is the perfect opportunity, the only one in a lifetime, to corner that elder. However, the only way to reach him would be by flying. Noor begins to think that he might know some way, and in a change of scene, they gather at the dragon's corpse. The cleric then uses his magic to heal it, since in that way they could revive it and ride it to begin their pursuit of the Emperor. Moreover, if it were to lose control once again, it is very doubtful that they could stop it. Oaken then asks the young man whether he could control the dragon, questioning if that is truly safe, but he answers that it is not safe at all, since he has no confidence whatsoever. Oaken then comments that he should reconsider, but the cleric says it is already decided that it will recover consciousness anyway. Besides, this is Noor's request, and although its aura and appearance remain the same, it has become much larger. Oaken is then surprised, and asks if this is really No, since he had not realized it at all. A long time has passed since he saw him for the last time, and Noor comments that years have already passed. What truly surprises Oaken is that he is still alive. At that moment, the dragon awakens, and Noor asks the dwarf please to tell him what to do. But suddenly, the dragon rises and roars. Everything is fine, because it seems it will do whatever it is told. Oaken is astonished, since it is unbelievable that a child who is half demon can speak with the Calamity Dragon itself. This is simply a dream becoming reality, and it informs that it is very grateful for the treatment received, although it is somewhat strange for a dragon to express gratitude. Hulu then warns that the dragon wants to take revenge on the Empire. It only needs to be ordered. The mage is surprised to see that he can even give orders to the dragon. Lynn comments that she also intends to go with him, and if she goes, obviously the blonde will go as well. Zen comments that peaceful negotiations are his specialty, although Guru replies not to compare him because he does not provoke fear with his antics. Besides, he possesses an enhancement tool of concealment, and if they intend to fly, his concealment is essential. Lynn asks Noor whether he will also go, and he begins to think that he does not like heights since he was rather dizzy when he jumped the castle wall. At the time, he did not have many problems, but now just thinking about it makes him very nervous. His intention was only to make a suggestion, but if the one who asked Hulu to speak with the dragon did not go, that would be very bad. Feeling pressured, he answers that he will go. At that moment, the king and his son appear. Ren then says that it did not go to Mitra, and she apologizes to him, and she informs him that she will accept any punishment for violating his order. But he responds that giving that order was merely a foolish mistake, since No and she were of great help, and he thanks them for having returned. After that, everyone mounts the dragon, and he says that he also wants to go to the Empire, and Hulu will be the one who will control the dragon in line, and any circumlex will also accompany them to protect him. The king tells Noor that he knows he is abusing his trust, but he asks him for a favor, that if it is not too troublesome, he could protect his children. He answers confidently that he does not need to worry, since he will bring everyone back safely. Hulu asks the dragon to begin flying, and they depart toward the Empire. On the other side, we see how the Saint of the Shield and the Saint of the Sword are talking. The Saint of the Sword asks whether he agrees with all of this. He still has not said anything to Noor, after they finally found him, after all this time. But he answers that in truth, Noor never needed them. They thought they could shelter him and raise him, and they were simply blinded by their own arrogance. Since now Noor is like a hero taken directly from legends, and it makes them feel like objects of ridicule. Sid feels very ashamed of his own laziness, because he should not have wasted time thinking he was in a position to teach others, and now he will have to return to training from zero. He has been aware of his own flaws. He cannot simply lie in a hammock and relax, while his sword rusts, although the big man comments that for someone who is ashamed, he seems quite happy. Sid replies that he truly is, since after Noor showed such a spectacle, there is no way not to be. On the other side, we see the group searching for the Emperor from the skies, but they still have not managed to find him. And if they do not do this as quickly as possible, he will manage to escape, and that will be the worst possible scenario. At that moment, the Saint Assassin warns Rain that there is an Imperial checkpoint ahead, and if they enter that zone, they will be severely harmed. But Lion manages to locate the Emperor. He is running at the speed of light. He heads rapidly toward the gates of the Empire, and if he manages to enter, it will be very difficult for them to get inside as well. Rain is then asked what he intends to do, since now he must choose whether to continue the pursuit or return, because from this point, they will enter an area officially under Imperial control, and they possess a great quantity of magical weapons and countless fortresses. At this speed, they could never catch him, and if the dragon flew much faster, they would fall. Rain decides to continue forward, and even though this is dangerous, since now an empire possesses high technology, then it will only be a matter of time. Soon they will be able to produce it in mass. The only thing the Emperor will do upon returning is prepare even more weaponry for revenge. And if that happens, the Kingdom of Clays will definitely be destroyed, and they must prevent this at all costs. At that moment, Denise asks permission to completely annihilate the entire area. Lion is surprised and remembers Denise, besides being the Divine Shield, is also the Divine Sword, possessing overwhelming destructive power, and with her sword she can cut anything. Rain grants permission to destroy the entire base. She summons her Divine Sword and begins destroying everything. Rain tells his sister that from this moment, all of this will determine a massive war, but they must pursue the Emperor, and he asks whether she is ready for that. She confidently answers yes, and everyone around her exerts extraordinary power. These are the strongest and most unimaginable people, so there is no need to worry about anything. Besides that, there is her instructor, Noor, who is the strongest person in this universe without question, and he has not even begun to understand his greatness. But Noor at this moment is unconscious since he is very exhausted. Lion thinks about teaching the Emperor a lesson about what happens when he meddles with the wrong people. Meanwhile, the Emperor advances desperately toward his kingdom and finally arrives at his castle. That kingdom looks very much like Midgar from Final Fantasy, and when he arrives, all his subjects are surprised to see him there. They ask what he is doing in that place, since he should be in the Kingdom of Clash. They ask about his troops, but the Emperor only shouts, saying they are useless soldiers that despite being well armed, they could accomplish nothing. And the worst of all was encountering that individual who caused him deep terror. But at that moment, they show a portrait they have just received, leaving everyone shocked. The Emperor wonders what the Calamity Dragon is doing in the Empire, when it was supposed to have been defeated thanks to Brinnock. But then he thinks that perhaps it is the work of that damned holy cleric, since if it were him, he could certainly have resurrected it. At that moment, he remembers Demonfold and asks them where that young man is. The frightened youth answers that he left on a mission, since it was an urgent matter that required his attention. The angry Emperor thinks that man fled and asks what they did not to stop him. Although the strange man with the unusual haircut says that he himself was the one who told them to give him special treatment. The irritated Emperor knocks him to the ground, and Randus asks him to maintain composure. But the Emperor orders them to be silent and says it is better to devise a plan instead of standing there like idiots, and he hopes it will be of some use to him. Randus then says that everything is fine and steps away. Meanwhile, the Emperor orders his subjects to use the Karanos. Everyone is shocked upon hearing him and tells him that this is impossible since it is still in an experimental phase and has not even been tested. The city could suffer greatly if they use it just like that. But he says that the disaster is already before his eyes. Yet the soldier replies that the collateral damage could be even worse. but the tired emperor kicks him and orders the rest that he needs a shot to be able to finish this thing. They then inform the entire city that the empire will temporarily suspend magical energy in all commercial and residential zones. Quickly, the city loses power, and they begin charging the powerful cannon. But one of his scientists warns that this weapon is still incomplete. The emperor does not care at all. He orders them to activate magical tracking on the firing cannon. And without further delay, he obeys and fires a powerful beam of massive destruction. Imperial magical technology is the sacrifice of all geniuses, and this one in particular cannot be compared to that Brinac. He certainly believes that nothing will be able to stop it, and once he defeats the Calamity Dragon, he will become a new legend, but he is bewildered when he sees that his strike was deflected. All thanks to Noir, he sends the attack directly into the skies. The attack fragments and the Emperor is shocked to see how easily it was deflected. His followers, upon seeing the mistake they made, decide to leave him alone and depart quickly. And the Emperor watches in terror as the fragments of the cannon begin to fall upon the city. The city then starts being completely destroyed. And moments earlier, we see Noor's journey. Everything from his perspective, where he awakens and notices that the entire kingdom is without power. Everyone is shocked when they see such an attack, remaining completely motionless. Lenny asks Rollo to move the dragon quickly, but Anise decides to attempt a parallel attack. Noor is the one who acts quickly and in an epic manner, and with his absurd defense, he deflects it toward the sky. Everyone is amazed by his majestic spectacle, but No does not think about what he would do after the attack, and he falls toward the kingdom. But he quickly thinks of a strategy and uses his sword to land safely. On the other side, we see Randas and the Circle of 10, who stand before the Emperor. Those who decide to finish him because of him, the Empire is in its current state. Because of his greed, the entire Empire lies in destruction, and it was he who led them to this point, and now they will be the ones to end his life. Randas decides to finish him. The Emperor begins to beg for his life, asking for help. But when he is about to send him directly to meet God, Noor appears. The Circle of 10 remains alert. Although the Emperor becomes terrified upon seeing No, Noor upon seeing him realizes that he is the old man. Randius asks what the hell he is doing in that place and why he is protecting that man. He asks whether he is perhaps a mercenary, but a confused Noor replies that he is not. He says he is not very sure what is happening, but asks them to calm down, but they attack him with a cannon, and he quickly dodges. He then grabs the Emperor's head and places it against the ground so he will not be hurt by the debris. Although Randius tells his companions that the Emperor has an experienced bodyguard, Noor replies that he does not understand what is happening. But Randius already states that there is no other way to interpret this situation. Together they attack Noor, but with a single motion he deflects them all. Randas tells him that that man caused great irreparable damage to their empire, and now he must pay with his life. But Noor asks them to explain how they could resolve this in another way, like by talking. But the others have no intention of talking, and a bald man throws a grenade, and Noor knows very well that he cannot parry that grenade. So he kicks the Emperor so that he will leave the range of the explosion. But the poor man ends up basically crushed against a wall. Noor asks what they are doing, but the blonde replies that it was he who kicked and crushed the poor man into the wall. Noor asks whether that man is their emperor. Then why is he doing all of this? He cannot understand the situation. And then Randas says that he does not need to understand anything. He tries to use more grenades against the Emperor, but Noor grabs him and throws him back into a chair. The blonde asks Noor what the deal is, whether he himself is the one trying to kill him. Noor replies that this is not true. Besides that, he is old enough to die at any moment, so he simply cannot allow nature to follow its course. Randas replies that he cannot let him go free since the enemy is already prepared and invading his territory. And among them is the Dragon of Calamity. A confused Noor asks what he means by invading. And Randius answers that, precisely for that reason, he needs to finish off the Emperor and does not have time to remain in this fight, since now his country is already doomed. At the very least, that man's head can be offered to his enemies, because due to this Emperor's greed, this was the result that occurred, but they also share the blame since they did not stop him. And if it were truly necessary, they would also gladly give their own lives in order to save their kingdom. But at that moment, Lion and his brother, the Holy Cleric, and the thief enter the hall. The Holy Cleric comments that he appreciates their consideration, but there is no need to kill the Emperor since the undead cannot atone for their sins. Lion, upon seeing that Noor is safe, feels relieved. He answers that he was lucky to land in a very good place, and the prince asks Noor whether he can allow him to take charge of everything from now on. He replies that obviously he has no problem with that, because the best way to deal with this is to negotiate rather than fight. He wishes to help the elderly man who was about to be injured, but it seems very difficult to talk with them. The prince answers that now he should not worry about anything, since conversation is the main part of his duties. Ren asks the Circle of 10 to sheathe their swords, since they now have much to discuss about that man, and if possible he would like them to hand him over alive. Randall replies that he has no objection at all, and the frightened king asks for forgiveness. Ren asks why he is asking for forgiveness now, but at that moment he begins to describe everything: the people who died in his kingdom, and the ways in which it happened. In addition, all the wounded, the 12 people whose internal organs were devoured by monsters, the 27 with crushed skulls, and the other 16 whose spines were shattered, as well as another 38 who suffered fractures in their limbs, along with the 6 who lost arms and legs, all of that. And for that reason, he proposes that if he is willing to suffer as much as the victims he just mentioned, he will grant him pardon, and they will proceed to discuss the end of the war and its reparations. He asks the Circle of 10 whether they have any objections to his proposal, and they answer that they have none. The emperor replies that this cannot possibly be allowed, but the holy cleric informs him that he should not worry, because even if he experiences the pain, he will not die. Or rather, they will never kill him, since even if they keep removing his skull and extracting his organs, or doing whatever they wish, he will not die, because he will always be revived soon afterward. They will not allow that wretch to simply lose his mind from mental exhaustion. They will make sure he remains able to speak, so that he can atone for all his sins with his own body. The cowardly emperor once again shows fear, and Ren replies that he should not worry since his country is very merciful, and that is how they begin the process of forgiveness. Meanwhile, Lion and Noor observe all the damage that was caused to the empire. He comments that there is no reason to worry about all that destruction, since apparently only the facilities were destroyed, as well as the mana furnaces that were responsible for supplying all magical energy in the empire. Because when that super cannon was used, it was set with magical tracking, and when it fragmented, it began to follow sources of magical energy and ended up detonating all the nuclear reactors. But apparently the people are safe. A little later, they gather once again, and they inform. Know that from now on the two countries will move forward to coordinate the post-war reconstruction. No is surprised since the war started and already ended, and no one told him anything. But when they look at him, they fall silent and ask the group what will happen to the elder. They answer that he decided to abdicate the throne, and it is very likely that his grandson will be chosen to inherit the crown, although he is only 10 years old, which means he must appoint a guardian, and the guardian will be the Circle of 10, whom they met earlier. At that moment, Hondos appears and apologizes for the misunderstanding from before, but he replies that he is not actually worried, so there is no need to make peace. The most important thing is that he should reconsider his morals, whether he truly believes what he is doing is right, since it is not good to conspire like that against the elderly. And Randus answers that it is true. That is something to be ashamed of, since if he had not been there to stop them, all of this could have ended in a very unpleasant civil war. Noor replies that there is no reason to thank him, because he was the one who was lucky to land on the ground in that place, since he had nowhere else to fall. And if he had landed somewhere else, he probably would have died. Randius comments that he is a very lucky man, and Rollo, on the other hand, already has the dragon prepared. And after some time, everyone boards it to return to their kingdom. Right after they bid farewell, the dragon takes flight. And once in the air, Noor asks Rollo to please lower the dragon's altitude, since he has a fear of heights, while Leah watches, and thinks that his mentor is an extremely compassionate person, and that she must learn much more from his example. And after several hours of long flight, they finally arrive at a kingdom where the king announces that the war has finally ended. This war here was the shortest war I have ever seen. It did not even last a single day. The king apologizes to Ren for making him negotiate, and asks that later he provide details, since first he must thank his savior. And Ren informs his father that Noor definitely made incredible contributions in the battle and deserves a reward worthy of his deeds. But Noor, once again trying to act very humble, says that it is not necessary. He is very honored, but he truly does not need anything. But the king refuses, because this time he simply cannot deny it. He must give a worthy reward, or otherwise he will set a very bad example for everyone. Noor understands, but he does not want it. Although the king replies that the royal family truly wishes to impress him, even if he says that he wants nothing. Noor looks at Rollo and comments that actually there is one thing he desires. The king replies that he should simply speak, and Noor asks him to help that child. The king looks and realizes that he is a demonfold, and Noor answers that he has no one to live with since he was abandoned by a group of merchants. so he wishes that they allow him to live in the capital and provide him with a normal life alongside the other citizens. Noor considered that they could live together, but it is better for him to be cared for by a wealthy family and not by someone with unstable income like himself. He comments that he would like them to give him a house and land, since something like that would already be excellent, along with food and clothing. And of course, if that is not too troublesome, he says that it is fine. But for that to happen, that child first needs to become a citizen. Noor replies that he saved his life countless times, and the only reason that enormous dragon did what it was told was because Rollo was with him. But Rollo tries to say that it was not him yet. Noor stops him and mentions that there is no need to be humble. He tells the king that if Rollo had not been there, the war would not have ended so quickly. But in reality, everyone knows that this war only ended because of No. But anyway, all of that is what he truly desires out of everything he could ask for. The king then thinks that the theocracy of Mitra considers the demon fold as enemies, which means that accepting one into his kingdom will cause a major rupture in relations between them. Noor comments that just so he knows, he does not need anything more than that. And if he wishes to offer other rewards, it is better that he spend them elsewhere, since there are never few people who have lost their homes, and they are truly the ones he should help in times like these. The others are impressed, and the king replies that he is right. And at that moment, Rollo looks at him, and suddenly everything turns red. He thinks that if he is reborn, he hopes they will not hurt him in the next life. He hopes he can at least be somewhat useful to someone. He would like to eat something delicious at least once in his life. And after everything turns dark, he wakes up in a bed with new clothes, and then meets with Indonice, who informs him that from that moment he will live there with her, and he is welcome in her home soon after. She says that she will prepare a very good meal, but if he does not eat quickly, it will grow cold. Rollo is surprised and asks if he can eat all of that, and she answers that of course he can, since that is his dinner. Rollo is amazed when he sees that it is real food, and any circumflex asks him not to be shy and to start eating immediately, otherwise she will become angry with him. Rollo begins to take the bread and is surprised to see that it is soft, and after tasting it, he begins to cry. Any circumflex asks what is happening, but then he begins to eat desperately while crying, and Incircumflex asks him to eat more slowly, because no one will take that food away from him. After all of that, they return to the city, where they find themselves among ruins, and the citizens have no alternative but to accept the destruction of their homes. Noor moves forward through the ruins of the kingdom, observing the horrible panorama that is formed, although he is surprised to see that the guild somehow managed to survive. As he tries to move forward, he picks up a poster from the ground and remembers when he was young, when the guild leader was surprised to see him, since even after a year, after training for 3 months in every field, he had not obtained a single skill. Although without further delay, at that moment, he had to resign himself, since they would not hire him under any circumstances. And he would never have imagined that he would reunite with those same mentors from that time, since 15 years have passed since then. And now we see how 15 years earlier, he asked the Sword Saint to train him as a swordsman, and he asked whether he had permission from the guild, and Noor did not hesitate to show it. His mentor says that the training is extremely intense, and asks whether he is sure he will be able to endure it. But we already know, and he trained harder than anyone. But on his first day, the Sword Saint thought he would not last even 3 days. Yet he was very surprised to see that Noor kept training. Even after 10 days, he thought that this boy's tenacity was not something that could be underestimated. And a few days later, Noor is there practicing and ends up being struck by a massive iron ball and ends up dropping his sword. The Sword Saint scolds him and says that even if his bones break, he must never let it go. So Noor picks it up again and tries once more, leaving the Sword Saint surprised when he notices that his eyes are full of vigor. Even after putting his body and mind to the test, he thinks that this boy will definitely have a promising future. Sometime later, Noor asks when he will learn a skill, but he answers that it is not something he decides. Although Noor asks that at least he shows some kind of skill that he could obtain, and his master decides to take him to the field and demonstrates his ability, leaving Noor astonished, since he saw how he cut all the leaves and says that it was astonishing, although he did not see part of it. The Sword Saint already expected that, since that is a rapid footwork technique, which makes it very difficult to follow even for him, and a boy like No probably saw nothing. But he is shocked when he hears that Noor could see everything he did. Not everything, but almost everything. And Noor comments that he kept the same rhythm the entire time, replicating the movements the Sword Saint made. And he then thinks that in the future, this boy with great potential might even surpass him. However, after 2 months of training, Noor never developed a single skill. Well, he did develop one, Vegeta parry. And because of that, the Sword Saint comments that unfortunately it no longer makes sense to continue his training. Continuing would only be a waste of time, because parrying alone is not enough for someone to become a swordsman. He then thinks that perhaps Noor is not suited for fencing, and therefore considers recommending him to another training field so that he can refine his abilities and not waste time with swordsmanship. He takes him to the Shield Saint, but he asks whether he truly intends to participate in that training regime. Noor answers that the Master of Swordsmen told him to try another place. The red-haired man remembers that he had been taking care of a child, but Noor seems very small. Any strong breeze could have carried him away. Yet, they conducted the training, and sometime later, the red-haired man acknowledges him, since he did not think he would come this far. And while they are on a rocky cliff, everyone fled, but Noor stayed there. Yet the red-haired man intervened to save him, realizing that this boy is very brave, and if he could acquire even a single skill, he could shape that child to literally become an invincible shield. But 3 months later, he had not obtained any. All he truly gained was a slight improvement in his physical abilities. If he forced him to continue, he would end up losing his life, and the red-haired man thinks that Noor should be somewhere where his efforts would be rewarded. So shortly afterward, he goes to the Holy Archer so that she can train him, and she is reluctant. She simply gives him a stone and tells him to try to hit the branch tied far away. But what she did not expect was that Noor would hit it on the first try, leaving her shocked. She orders him to try again, and he continues throwing stones and denting shields, and he asks his instructor why he does nothing besides throwing stones. She knows very well that if she puts a bow in that boy's hands, it will be complicated since his strength is absurd. But Noor keeps insisting, and she decides to give him one. But when he tries to use the bow, Noor ends up simply destroying it completely. Every single one she gave him, he broke. She even hands him her own bow so that he can use it for training, since she thinks that this one will not break no matter how strong he is. But in any case, he ended up breaking it as well. With no other options, Noor had to train only with stones, and that continued for 2 months of his training. The archer asked where he learned to do that, and Noor revealed that no one taught him. He simply learned by hunting birds. These birds are very colorful, and they like to dive down from the sky. The archer knows exactly which bird he is talking about, and she becomes very surprised since it is difficult to hunt even for an experienced hunter, even using a superior bow. She tells Noah that it makes no sense for him to remain there, and that it is better for him to leave, although he replies that he still has not learned anything. But she says that he completely lacks any sense required to use any delicate weapon. Besides that, he already possesses enough ability to do it even without a bow. After that, he goes to the Saint of Assassin. He receives him because he had already heard about him. He teaches the stealth arts of the thief. He notices that No is quite good, but he strives because he needs to be even better. Then he makes him go through several traps until he reaches the treasure vault, which is very difficult to open. Noor understands that he must avoid the traps, but when they tell him to avoid them, he simply does the opposite and goes around activating everything. He touches every single trap while evading them. He destroys them all and dodges, leaving the Saint of Assassins surprised since the intended purpose of the condemned army is being lost. 3 months later, he had not learned to dismantle a single trap, and his situational awareness is very poor. So there is absolutely no hope that he can learn any skill. But even so, he thinks that the boy possesses remarkable resilience and unmatched endurance. He wonders that if Noor were to give up becoming an adventurer, he could extend an invitation for him to join an intelligence agency in the royal capital. Soon after that, he went to become a mage, where Oaken explained that he had a special permit. He had already trained in all the other areas, but achieved nothing. And after 2 months of training with Oaken, he also achieved nothing. The reason he cannot use magic is because perhaps he was born without it, and in that case his only hope to change, that is to enter the Mona resonance chamber. Noor asks him to let him try, and Oaken eventually agrees, but warns him that he must leave immediately if he feels anything intense. But after some time, he reports that No has been locked inside the resonance chamber for days, and frightened he runs to look for him. Upon opening the door, he sees Noor completely relaxed, and he asks him not to interrupt, and then pulls him out of the resonance chamber. But 3 months later, the only thing he managed to do was learn that tiny flame. And Oaken mentions that it is very rare to see someone literally incapable of using magic like him. And given his lack of magic, it is truly impressive how far he has come. Although at that moment, Noor activates another small flame, leaving Oaken astonished and shocked when he sees that Noor is performing double casting, which took him 50 years to reach. While that little Noor achieved it in only 3 months, however, even with all those abilities, he still was not useful for becoming an adventurer. Oaken tells him that he is absolutely right, and if only his body possessed magic, he could have been known throughout the land as the unrivaled mage, but he was nerfed by destiny. After that, he goes to the holy cleric, who asks whether he underwent the Benson rite when he was a small child, since only students selected in advance are subjected to that rite, and that is how they can be trained in that school. But since he did not prepare in advance, he cannot enter, but Noor says that he will not leave that place until he is allowed to train there. The holy cleric returns into his church and leaves him outside, and several days pass, many days, until when he is there almost dying. The holy cleric finally accepts him, but warns him that there is no guarantee that he will be able to learn anything. And 3 months after beginning his training, what do you think happened? Yes, all he could do was use a minor heal. That will not be recognized as a useful skill for becoming an adventurer, and already disappointed, he decides to leave. The white-haired man mentions that it is impressive that he can use healing magic of such a low level without any natural blessing, and so he should not be underestimated. And as he leaves, he thinks that he accomplished a miracle all by himself without even undergoing the rite or using a sacred spirit as an intermediary. He is glad to say that he can wield the power of miracles without any kind of limit. And upon returning to the church, they were informed about No, and after all the saints gathered, they all realized that Noor had disappeared from the capital. Archaea mentions that the boy is quite strong and can take care of himself. But the cleric comments that if they cultivated his gifts, that boy could undoubtedly become someone extraordinary. Oaken agrees, and the red-haired one never imagined that the same thing had happened in all the other schools. That small boy overflows with promise, and they all decide to go look for No. And as the 6 sovereigns they are, they all plan to take him in and raise him together. They all agree, and after that they set out in search of him. Now returning to the prison, we see Noor arriving at the guild carrying a board. The guild leader is happy to see him, and Noor hands over the board that had been lying outside. The guild leader then asks whether he was not going to Mitra. Noor replies that yes, but he wanted to see what was happening in the capital, so he decided to return. Everyone has gone through very difficult times, and Noor is very exhausted. Although the guild leader apologizes, he says he hates to do this while Noor is already exhausted. The construction guild chief has been searching everywhere for him and needs help transporting rubble and building temporary shelters. Noor gladly agrees. After some time, he is working in the ruins alongside others, and the citizens are happy to have him there. He thinks to himself that it has been a very hectic day. He traveled by carriage, met Rollo, got launched by Ares using Lion's magic, and then launched again by another spell. Of course, he doesn't mention that he defeated a poisonous dragon, a calamity black dragon, and even an entire army. He is, after all, a humble man just living his life. What sticks in his mind most is still being thrown around by Lion and Ares. Even so, he keeps working, though he feels hungry and decides to finish quickly so he can eat and rest. Meanwhile, the king tells his son that the holy theocracy of Mitra had been working behind the scenes in the war, alongside Didas. From the Minotaur incident to the Empire's magical stockpiles and rare high-purity resources, everything points to unstable days ahead. Still, the king is relieved, because now they have people they can trust, especially that man, Noor. Back at the ruins, Noor continues working. Lion approaches him and thanks him for everything that happened the previous day. Noor replies that he should be the one grateful, while she notices he is distributing supplies and helping the wounded. She asks if he is helping with reconstruction, and he says yes, right as his stomach growls. Lion gives him bread so he can recover his strength, then leaves him with a warning not to overexert himself. Noor thinks that he wouldn't be here without everyone's help. After eating, he feels much better and continues working. He looks at his sword, thinking it is strong and reliable, even if it won't see much flashy use. Still, he wants to become an adventurer and live the kind of journeys his father used to tell him about. A worker tells him the area has been cleared and asks him to move elsewhere. Noor happily agrees. But suddenly, a tower begins to collapse toward him. In a single movement, he deflects it effortlessly, leaving the old man stunned, and then calmly continues his work. And then, the story ends. Thank you all. God bless. See you guys.